I hope Reese knows what he's doing. Lilith says he's one of us, but can't trust a man with a mustache. That's just science.
She blinded me with science. Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out to get me, but I feel alright.
The road to Borderlands 3 has been a tumultuous one, to say the least. I think we can all safely agree upon that. Developer Gearbox Software and publisher 2K Games seem to have been involved in one PR kerfuffle after another. Quite a bit of controversy orbiting this game, but the game is out now. Borderlands 3 is in the hands of many, and it's time to focus just on the game, just on the production itself. Let's see what Borderlands 3 is all about, whether it's worth your money, and more importantly, if it's a good game or not. Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford once famously left a USB thumb drive with sensitive work documents and teen squirt porn all sharing the same space in a medieval times. Borderlands 3 is more Borderlands. If you want another looter shooter with cartoony, cel-shady looking graphics, a sense of humour that is, let's just say, for very particular niche tastes, and just lots of guns, lots of loot, lots of positive feedback, a constant sense of progression, a consistent sense of acquiring power for the sheer thrill of power's acquisition, then Borderlands 3 will sort you out. It's not going to surprise you if you've played any Borderlands game in the past. There is not a lot that really changes the formula. There are just additions, more features, more gimmicks for guns, and more planets to explore, although, to be fair, the planets themselves aren't all that distinct. Visually, they have some differences. You know, one might look more open with war-torn city streets, which thematically is somewhat different from Pandora's desolate desert-like wasteland, but wherever you go, they're all open spaces with very similar enemies. Atmospherically, each planet feels pretty much the same. Borderlands 3 publisher 2K Games once tanked a YouTuber's entire channel over Borderlands 3 leaks, claiming that they were trade secrets being shared, something that stretches the realm of credibility. This is after the YouTuber admitted fault and bent over backwards to appease 2K and its parent company, Take-Two Interactive. But what about Borderlands 3's classes? Well, there's a siren, of course, using magic and shit. There's a gun-toting character that can cool down a giant mech, and there's another one that can produce doppelgangers. I've been using Flak the Beastmaster, which, as the name implies, has beasts that they master. You can have a single pet active at any one time based on monsters that you fight in Borderlands, and you get cool abilities like being able to summon racks, they're the evil monster bats, and have them chew the enemies up. And I've been finding that quite fun. It's quite, I like little pets running around in games, so I like that you've got pets here. And for those asking, can you pet the dog, or in this case, can you pet the skag, or the spider ant, or the monkey with a gun? You can touch them. That's the designation. You get a button if you look at it and you can touch pet and it'll just do a little cute animation. Though with the sheer amount of violence on screen, one feels a little bit uncomfortable sending a beloved pet into battle to get mashed by giant thugs and robots. It feels a little bit abusive, not dissimilar to the kind of abuse that Gearbox's CEO has been credibly accused of, with a backed up first-hand account of an employee being physically assaulted in the lobby of a hotel. To say that Borderlands 3 is just more of the same is to come across quite harsh, I think, in some people's eyes, but it's not necessarily a heavy criticism of the game. The formula is simple, but it's still got quite a few legs, I think. Mindlessly blasting away to get better guns to mindlessly blast away to get better guns is a good pattern, a good routine. And Borderlands has always done it well. A lot of looter shooters have come out in the past few years as many so-called AAA game publishers exploit the formula for microtransaction-fueled live service experiences. So I think it's fully understandable if one is fatigued by the entire subgenre to the point where Borderlands 3 just won't appeal to them. But nonetheless, it's heartening to see that Borderlands 3 has indeed resisted the urge to go fully down that live service path. The game's loot is still all earned in-game. Guns drop frequently, they are powerful, you do not need to spend money on top of the cash you already spent for the game to keep incrementally getting better loot, to keep getting rarer and legendary items. You level up fairly quickly, you're getting new stuff all of the time, there is no sense of grinding here. The game clearly hasn't been messed with, hasn't been tinkered with to exasperate and exhaust the player into spending on microtransactions, and that's just nice to see now. With 2K Games being the publisher, one could reasonably expect Borderlands of all games to fall heavily into loot boxes and incremental purchases. 2K Games, of course, is a publisher so thoroughly, utterly brazen that it put out a trailer for NBA 2K20 that advertised loot boxes alongside slot machines and lucky spinny wheels, linking loot boxes to gambling in such a way it was almost daring the world to come after it. For Gearbox Software to resist monetizing the hell out of Borderlands 3 is something that shouldn't be impressive, given that it should be the bare minimum standard of ethics to provide a complete and rewarding experience for upwards of $60, but it's nonetheless nice to see. That's not to say there won't be things like character skins on sale, but the game itself has a robust number of them earned in-game. Less than an hour into the experience, I found a cool new head that I could swap on my character, and I shouldn't feel grateful for that. It should be the bare minimum expectation, like I said. But nonetheless, I was playing and I was like, oh, I'm getting new costume parts, I'm getting new character skins. Such basic common standards feel generous these days from the so-called AAA game space. Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford doesn't necessarily understand monetization, claiming there'd be no microtransaction nonsense in Borderlands 3, even though there will be some microtransactions. And when a Game Informer article corrected Randy's statements, Randy Pitchford went to Twitter to whine and cry and say that the publication was trying to fuck him. This is part of a pattern of self-imposed victimhood on the part of the executive, dating back to at least 2012, after he'd spent months lying about Aliens, colonial marines and its quality, and blamed the criticism he faced in the interim on biases and vendettas. I said earlier that Borderlands 3's humour is for niche tastes, and that's because I don't think many people will find it funny at all. I didn't. And I found Borderlands 2 quite funny, so I've got the lack of humour needed to generally be amused by Borderlands. I don't know if Borderlands 3 is just particularly unamusing, or if I'm just over all of those reference-laden, meme-filled jokes. One thing I did notice, and I've never liked this about the previous games as well, is that Borderlands is full of obnoxious characters. Now, they're supposed to be obnoxious, they're supposed to be arrogant, self-serving, loud, boorish assholes, but they all are. Almost every character in Borderlands 3 is some kind of jackass. One or two characters that are egotistical and take credit for your work as the player. One or two screeching, screaming imbeciles. That's fine enough. But when you are surrounded by assholes, well, you're simply surrounded by assholes. And being surrounded by assholes simply isn't fun. The sheer level of obnoxiousness for the characters is so overwhelming that the actual villains don't stand out, because they're simply jerks among a cast of jerks. If I want to punch half of the good guys in the face, I'm simply not going to care particularly about punching the bad guys in the face. There's that idea that if a film or a game or something is too dark and brooding, people will get apathetic. If there's no levity in your grim production, then the grimness will lose its bite. It needs to be juxtaposed against something brighter here and there, even just a little bit, to contextualize and emphasize the grimness. There can be some very well done exceptions, but it's a general rule. You need a little variance in tone, something to break up the pace of things. Something that keeps your overarching tone from becoming too stale from overexposure. The same can be said for Borderlands 3, only you replace the angsty brooding with dickheads. Either characters have no personality at all, or they are some shade of dickhead. Now, whether they're the kind of dickhead that claims a voice actor has not signed on to be part of a project and didn't want to be part of a project, when the voice actor in question confirmed they were actually interested in the project and simply weren't asked, well, that remains to be seen. I've not played the game in its totality. But so far, that has been my biggest barrier to enjoying Borderlands 3. The writing and the characterizations are just so abhorrently annoying, and it's something I've only truly truly felt with a measure of intensity while playing this particular Borderlands game. But I'm glad I got to play the polished final version of the game, not the early version that only a handful of reviewers got while a lot of other critics were left out in the cold due to what 2K Games unbelievably called, uncredibly called, security concerns. As annoying as the writing may be, and as much as I want to roll my eyes when I see an Amber Lamps reference, something that's pointing at a 9-year-old meme, I can't say I've had a bad time playing Borderlands 3. It's perfectly serviceable, it's fine enough. It's got hours and hours and hours of mindless shooting content, and it's consistently rewarding to the player. It's certainly not remarkable. I think I've emphasised quite clearly enough that it doesn't really stand out from the other Borderlands games. It's just a continuation of a formula that still does work pretty well. There are some neat gimmicks. A gun that can produce other little guns that run around, that's cool. There are lots of new vehicle and customization options. There's just more. That's really the emphasis. That's the calling card of this sequel. It's just more Borderlands with more stuff in it. And you probably won't notice some of the voice actor replacements for when, you know, Troy Baker wasn't asked to come back, seemingly for no good reason, or when Claptrap's original voice actor fell out of favour with Randy Pitchford, due in no small part to those allegations of physical assault. Randy Pitchford once shared on Twitter a video of a cat being abused after someone placed it with a pinching crab, and tried to justify it creepily by saying that he favoured curiosity, and said that among the negative feelings he felt while watching the video, there was other stuff that was not exactly negative. Borderlands 3 is a pretty good game.